All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on Copilot for Power BI. My name is John Agnich, and I'm the Vice President of Consulting Delivery here at Inspire Solutions. First, I'd like to introduce our presenters. First up, we have Igor Zaritsky. Igor is one of our data and analytics practice leaders. Igor, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background?
Sorry, John. So my name is Igor Zaritsky, and I'm the Senior Solutions Advisor for our Pro Services Division. I've been in the BI space for about 25 plus years, where I've spent about 9 years over at Citrix, a couple of years working on Disney projects for Inspire, as well as being part of the Inspire team for over 6 years.
Awesome. Thanks, Igor. Next, I'd like to introduce Andy Pineda, another leader in our data and analytics practice. Andy, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background?
Yes, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Pineda, and I am a practice lead here at Inspire Solutions. I have about 14 years of professional experience in the BI space, primarily specializing in both BI development and in architecture. And I've been on and off with Inspire Solutions for about a total of about 4 to 5 years now, aggregated across different projects. And I'm happy to be here to present Copilot for Power BI.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. All right, can you advance that, Igor? All right, for those who are not familiar with Inspire Solutions, and I'm hoping it's only a few of you, we are a national expert in delivering technology solutions and talent that align with industry and technical expertise. Next slide. So as you can see from this slide, our expertise spans across multiple practice areas, including data and analytics, application services, cloud and infrastructure, and more. So that's a little bit about Inspire Solutions. So to frame up today's session, we're going to break it up into two components. The first component is we're going to do a walkthrough of some slides to give everybody a high-level understanding of Copilot for Power BI. And then we're going to transition into a demo. So everybody's going to get a chance to see this live. I did get a chance to get a sneak peek at Copilot for Power BI, this demo that we're going to do, and the technology is fascinating. So really excited for everybody to get a chance to see that. As we go through the presentation, please leverage the Q&A feature. Add your question. I'll keep an eye on that. I'll look for opportunities to ask your question as we go through the presentation and demo. And if we don't get to it in line, then we're going to save time at the end for questions. And again, if we don't get to that, we will follow up in writing for that with your question. All right, I think that about covers it. Without further ado, Igor, take it away.
Perfect, John. Thank you so much. Before we begin, we're going to put a quick poll up just to get you guys to answer a question or two. So with that, moderate, can you please put the poll up?
It's up.
Perfect. So about Microsoft Copilot. So what is Copilot? Copilot is powered by an advanced AI-powered feature integrated into Microsoft's Power BI platform. Copilot aim is enhancing the data analysis and visualization in your visualization experience. Copilot for Power BI, some of the capabilities and functionality. It's AI-driven insights. It helps with getting your data into a state where you can do a bunch of different things to it. So natural query language queries, automated data preparation, your visualization recommendations, embedded analytics, collaboration and sharing, accessibility and usability are just some of the capabilities and functionality of the tool. How can Copilot help me? So Copilot can help authors with the following tasks. Ask Copilot questions about data in the model. You could add synonyms to enhance your Q&A, your natural query language. You can add descriptions to your semantic models and measures. You can even write DAX queries without knowing how to write one piece of code. You can summarize the underlying semantic model. It can make suggestion for content of a report. It can even create report pages for you. And it could also create summary and visualizations for you on the fly. Some of the features of Copilot are different capacity or different setup that you guys have within your organization. So here it lists some of the features and what's available for each one. As you can see, for most of the Copilot features, you would have to be on F64 license or above to be able to use that feature. And while you're using that feature, the F64 bucket, this is how your cost breaks out. So you do not pay separately for Fabric and Copilot. Everything is bundled under one SKU under Fabric, and you're just using the capacity units to run your questions and answers. So what does that mean for consumption rates? So this is the formula that has been provided from Microsoft on how you utilize those CUs, your capacity units. So in this example, if you're utilizing Copilot for Power BI and your request involves 500 input tokens and 100 output tokens, then you'll be charged a total of 320 CUs seconds in Fabric. So what does that mean in dollar amounts? So if we go back to this slide, so if we took the 320 CUs, divided it by 64, which you get 5 times 11.52 is about $50.
And Igor, if I could just add really
Sure.
quick. So just for the folks on the call, we will be using an F64 pay-as-you-go instance
For this demo, correct.
for the demo. Yep.
So with that, our demo, we're going to be creating a reports page. We'll create some recommended pages. We'll show you a narrative. We'll show you how simple DAX is to use with Copilot. We'll create some measure descriptions and help, and then we'll show you some functionalities in the Power BI web service. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy to do the demo. Before we get into the demo, could we please put up the second poll?
All right, guys. Let me see. I'm going to go ahead. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share my screen here with you guys. All right, so as Igor mentioned, Copilot is a tool that helps developers, analysts, even executives leverage data in an easy-to-use way. No real development is involved to get reporting done with Copilot, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by showing how to create a report with Copilot. And right now, what I have is Power BI desktop loaded. This is not the web, right? This is Power BI desktop. And I will also show some web functionalities as well at the end of the presentation. So let's kick this off by creating a report page, right? So right now we have this report here, competitive marketing analysis report, which is a dummy report just for presentation purposes. This report is made up of 3 different tabs, right? The different data, leveraging a data set, a semantic model that we have loaded on here. And what I'm going to do is, Power BI, what I'm going to do is go ahead and show you guys how to kick off a report using Copilot. So let's go ahead and click on the Copilot ribbon, or excuse me, I will go ahead and click on the Copilot ribbon up top. Once I do so, you will notice that Copilot will prompt us with 2 different suggestions. One is the ability to create a report page from scratch, or the second one is to suggest content. Now we'll run through both of these right quickly. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on create a report page. When I go ahead and do that, you will see that that prompt gets written into our message box down here, which we could always expand upon and add other information to. But for right now, we're just going to go ahead and click create a report page for presentation purposes and send. Once we send that, Copilot is going to turn around and say, okay, cool, you want to make a report page, but please provide the title and the description for the page. So we're going to go ahead and insert the following for this. We're going to ask Copilot to give us the total sales analysis by product and category for this dummy data set. Okay. So by just clicking on this button and inserting this information in plain English, right, we will get the following from Copilot. An entire tab, which gives us sales, sales by product, sales by category, sales by city, instantly, right? So this is something that, as a Power BI developer, Power BI developers, this is like a no-brainer. A Power BI developer could put this together probably fairly quickly, but sometimes a Power BI developer requires some thought, just some idea, some spark as to how to get going, how to get started. So this saves a Power BI developer a lot of time. Those that are SQL developers that are kind of converting and helping out in Power BI, this is a great starting point to start to get tabs together. And those that are more on the analyst side, even an executive who's daring to go into the tool and start to play with this is a great way to start to just get visuals to go right off the bat, right? So by simply clicking, create a new report, plain English, writing a query and sending it, we have a great starting page. And with this, we could go ahead and, for example, click on sales by product and expand upon it visually, right? So we could go ahead into our product data set, bring product into the legend, go into our product data set, bring category into the legend, etc., and expand upon this very quickly. Whereas somebody else, right, anybody else within your industry or enterprise could take a significant more amount of time to get a visual like this going, right? So very quick and very powerful. The other way we could get a report started is by clicking on suggest content for this report. Now, by doing this takes a little bit of time because Copilot has to go ahead and analyze your entire data set and has to go ahead and, just like I said, analyze the data and see what it has going for it in order to make suggestions. So by clicking on this, here we get this prompt, right? Copilot has suggested the following 4 areas to use to create a new tab on your report, right? Sales performance analysis, market share evaluation, sentiment score overview, or key performance indicators. Now, for the sake of this presentation, we will go ahead and use key performance indicators. Now, when we expand key performance indicators, you will see what gets prompted and sent to Copilot, which is the following. Create a page to track and analyze key performance indicators related to sales and market share. If we go ahead and click on this little pencil here, you see that you could go ahead and affect this. So you could also say something like, include, product or something like that, right? This isn't set in stone. Simply, Copilot is showing you, it's very transparent. It's just showing you what it's sending by clicking on some of these prompts, and you're communicating with Copilot, right? And in a very natural query language style, sending this information over. Now, for the sake of the presentation, we'll keep this simple, and we will send exactly what the key performance indicator is sending, and I will go ahead and send this to Copilot. Now, this one will take a tiny bit longer than this other report, just because it has to, once again, take a look at all the data, the entire semantic model, and output a result. So we'll give this a moment.
And while this is running, so far, Andy has not written one piece of code.
Right.
And he will not be doing any code writing in this presentation as well.
That's a great point. And that's the power of Copilot. It'll take just a moment here. All right, here we go. Copilot goes ahead and gives us our KPIs for sales and market share, right? This entire tab, I mean, just check out how beautiful this looks, right? Just off the get-go, a tab with visuals, with KPIs across our categories, across our, our date measure, our date dimensions, across, giving us average scores, percentage units of market share, et cetera. I mean, great starting point for a KPI without writing a single line of code. I mean, in this instance, not even writing a single line of English, just clicking on a button and just saying submit, right? And we get this back. It's, it's a powerful tool to get started in reporting. And in some cases, depending on how far you go down these rabbit holes, I mean, just by click, 4 or 5 tabs, you probably have an entire report done, and you didn't even pretty have to communicate much with anything, right? So So this is one instance. This is clicking off a report in Copilot. The next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is share narrative with Copilot. So let's go back to our previous tab, and let's go ahead and take this sales dollars by category, and we're going to shrink this down by about half. And let's go ahead and click on our narrative feature. Now, narrative, for those of you that are familiar with it, is a way of explaining in plain English what is going on in the data set, or in this case, what's going on in the tab that we're looking at. But what's pretty cool is that Copilot goes ahead and takes that and also just kind of leverages and scales that into other dimensions. So let's go ahead and click on Copilot. And as you can see here, Copilot goes ahead and gives us, hold on. Let's go ahead. Okay, here we go. Copilot goes ahead and gives us a summary of data right off the bat, right? So it prompts us, you want to summarize your data? Okay, sure, Copilot, we want to go ahead and do that. But before I go ahead and do that, let me highlight the following. You have the ability to either highlight the data just in this tab. So this is our total sales analysis by product and category tab. Or you could go ahead and click also on your executive summary, top 10 regions, return on investment, whatever the case may be, and summarize data across your entire report, right? So we will go ahead and do that for this presentation. We'll go ahead and include executive summary, top 10 regions, return on investment, and what's on this tab for the presentation, which you can see highlights 35 visuals for what it's going to summarize, and we're going to hit update. Now, this is also something that takes a moment because it has to crunch the information and it has to crunch the information and go ahead and show us, the summaries of everything, right? So this takes a moment. And as we mentioned before, as I mentioned at the beginning of this call, or excuse me, at the beginning of the presentation here on my demo, an analyst, a developer who's limited, a developer who's even knowledgeable, just by clicking on this, gets this information. An executive, boom, information just on the fly, right? So here we get our output. The data provides information on the various business and metrics. Is over about what is this, a 20-year period, 30-year period, excuse me. For the urban product category, it summarizes our sales amounts. It summarizes our highest performing channels, our return on investment rates, highest performing sales across products, etc. So the point is that just by, once again, clicking on narrative, summarizing data, here we get a plain English breakout of everything that's going on in our report. Now, another cool thing is that it gives us points of reference. So if I go ahead and click on this one, for example, the 7.02 billion that it's referencing comes from this visual. If we go ahead and click on, say, this number four, which references a return on investment by product, it's showing you that it goes back to the tab and says, this is coming from this, right? So that way you're not completely kind of second guessing, like, well, where is this information even coming from? You know what I mean? Copilot takes that out of that, it takes the complexity out of that, if you will, to go ahead and answer questions in the most easiest way possible, not only by giving you the plain English description, but by also referencing where this information in your report is coming from. Once again, pretty cool, very quick, solution, right? Let's go ahead and move on to the next section, which is DAX help. So for those of you that are come from the SQL side, you know that DAX is a function-based language, which is kind of complicated in the sense that it just doesn't behave how we expect in SQL programming. And those for you that are Power BI developers, you might be a lot more visually inclined, and on the DAX you might be lacking, or even if you are a professional DAX developer, you might want a tool that just kind of helps you just get going, right? So let's go ahead and leverage Copilot for that. So in this report, we will go ahead and go to the DAX query view. And as we can see, the Microsoft team pretty much provides a starting DAX query that we could go ahead and use for this purpose. So we're going to go ahead and highlight this query, and we're going to go ahead and hit run. This query gives us the top 100 products for the dummy data that we are using. But let's say we don't understand what this is doing. We're so new to DAX that we're like, well, I don't understand top N. What's going on here, right? So we'll go ahead and once again highlight this and click Copilot, and we're going to simply click explain this query. Copilot will now go ahead and take a moment, analyze the query, and give us in plain English what this query is doing to our operation. Let's give it a moment here. Okay, cool. So it's outputs. Now it explains. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you guys could see the gist at a high level. DAX gives us what the evaluate function does. what the top end function does. And what's pretty cool is that it attributes it to your specific data set or your specific semantic model, where it uses, references it. The product table is specified as a second argument in the top end function. So it makes it very very personal, if you will, right, in the way that it describes the information. And what's pretty cool too is that it kind of like scales on it, and it says something along the lines of like, if you want to go ahead and add the top 100 products based on the category, for example, right, this is what you would add in. So it's not just giving you a plain kind of just description on what it's doing, it's also scaling on it to give you a better understanding of DAX, which is pretty neat, right? Something else you could do is you could create a DAX function just by speaking to Copilot in plain English. So what we're going to go ahead and do is close this out, and we're going to open up a new tab, and we're going to load Copilot, and we're going to simply say the following. Show me the top products by manufacturer. Plain and simple, right? We'll send this to Copilot. Boom. DAX output, right? Products, manufacturer, product, total units. We're going to go ahead and keep this query, and we're going to run it right there. Here's your output. Product, product manufacturer by product, total units. Great, amazing, right? Like you can now take this, copy and paste this in your model, in your fact model, whatever the case may be, and you have a DAX function ready to go, which you did not have to write any DAX code. I mean, you wrote this in plain English, right? That's the power behind this. Here's another neat thing about this DAX functionality here. Let's say you want to go ahead and just better understand DAX, because once again, you're limited, you don't understand, you don't know, whatever. We're going to load a new tab, and let's go ahead and click on Copilot once again, and let's send Copilot the following. Show me the most common DAX functions, okay? And we're going to send this. This is not a single line of code. This is talking to DAX in plain, talking to Copilot, excuse me, in plain English. And here we go. Show me the most common DAX functions. Sum, average, count date, total year to date, calculate, filter, right? And it applies it to your data sets, right? Which is, once again, the neat thing about this. It's like, it makes it personal to your data, right? Divide, if function is blank. This gives us an explanation about what Copilot, about what DAX does in its most, in its most basic sense. To those that don't understand or are not familiar with the DAX language, right? You could always hit retry, which is another neat thing about Copilot. It basically goes back and kind of puts this back into the engine, and it might reanalyze and say, well, you know what? You need a different way of looking at this. Let me give you a different angle, right? So we'll go ahead and click retry here. Let's see how long it takes. If it takes too long, we'll move on, but let's give it a short bit. Well, and it gives us the same output. I think the basic functions in Power BI, for those of us that know Power BI, we know what they are, right? So we're not going to get a lot of anything much more complex than that. The whole point is that it gives you the ability to, and as a matter of fact, that retry button works for when you are creating a query. It works with explaining definitions, which we'll see now moving on, right? So that's a very powerful thing too. If you don't get it one way, you'll get it another way. If the output is not something that it's kind of kosher or it makes sense, or it's not highlighting one thing that you expect, retry kind of rehashes it, right? So let me highlight that in our new section, which is our descriptions with Copilot, which we'll move on to. So going back to our model, going back to our dummy data, we see our report, right? And now we say, I want to go ahead and use Copilot to just better understand the data itself, right? What's going on behind this, some of these measures. Well, let's click on our model view. And now our model view gives us everything we're bringing in, our attributes, our measures, etc. But for our measures specifically, in this case, our sales fact table, Copilot does something pretty neat, which gives us a plain English description of what's going on with our data. For the sake of the presentation, I will highlight one of these measures, the percentage of usage market share, which is right here. And let's say we click on this and we see what it does. It takes the total Van Arsdale units. Van Arsdale is one of the manufacturers for this dummy data. And it says, if it equals 0, then 0, else, we're going to go ahead and divide, etc., right? But once again, we're so new to DAX that we don't understand. We don't understand what this is doing. We want to, we're an analyst and we're just trying to get some kind of general understanding. Well, let's go ahead and click Create with Copilot. Instantly, we get a plain English description of what this is doing. This calculates the percentage of Van Arsdal market share in units by dividing the total units sold by Van Arsdal by the total units sold in the market. If you understand what this means, if this is your specific data, you get a plain English explanation on what this does, right? Let's say that this description is just, once again, it's something that you're just still not quite clear on, right? Try again, like I mentioned before with the DAX functionalities, right? Try again, and we'll send this back to Copilot again, and we'll say, hey, Copilot, you got to do a little bit better, man. It's like, I get it, but I'm not too clear. So look, it rehashes it now in a different way. This calculates the percentage of Van Arstal's market share in units by dividing the total units sold by Van Arstal by the total units sold in the market. If this is a better explanation for you, and this is your data, and you understand what this means now, awesome, right? Let's go ahead and keep it. This will now populate inside of your description, which is powerful because you're writing these descriptions in your fact model, in your measures, and now yourself have a better understanding. Anybody else who comes along and uses this model has a better understanding. And there's a lot of power in the plain English description of stuff. That's why we write comments in our code, et cetera, right? So Copilot goes ahead and does this for you with your measures. I'm going to go ahead and choose another one here as an example. Let's use sentiment gap. And let's say we don't understand. We see all this code here. We're like, what the, right? We don't understand what's going on, right? So we'll click create with Copilot. And we'll give it a moment. And then here we go. Calculates the difference in sentiment between two manufacturers, returning a blank value if either sentiment is not available. Simple enough. Great, right? Keep it. And we move on to the next thing. And as you can see, if we go back to the units market share, well, the information that was there before gets stored, sentiment gap, the information there gets stored, all without writing a single description, without doing anything, just clicking and moving on to the next thing, clicking and moving on to the next thing. I mean, all these different measures, I could hypothetically run through all of them, click that, store, and at the very least, this gives a plain English description to your analysts or future developers on what this information is doing or attempting to do. Okay, very nice. Now, we have our total sales analysis by product and category done. We have our sales and market share KPI complete, right, from a Power BI desktop perspective. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and save this report, and we're going to go ahead and publish it to the web. Demo, select. Now, as this is publishing, once again, I hope you guys are able to see, just how simple it is to start to use this tool to just get development just going. I myself have been fascinated when, in doing my research in this tool, in just the hopes of being able to use it a lot more into the future, to get a lot of heavy duty Power BI development done. So here we go, right? We've been publishing to the web. We're ready to go. And let's bring up the web here. We got our Power BI loaded. Here's our workspace. Here's a report that we published. Okay, great. So this is the report that we published. Here's our total sales by analysis that we saw on the desktop with our narrative loading. We've got, let's give that a moment there. It's a lot of graphical stuff going on. Narrative is loading. Narrative takes a moment to reload again, but trust that it's doing its thing. And then we've also got the sales and market share coming up, right? Every time you click on narratives, I guess since the data could change hypothetically over time, it runs a refresh every time you're running it. But I guess that's definitely a way to making sure that the narrative is always processing and always giving you the latest and greatest information on your data. Now remember, when we clicked on this narrative, we loaded the entire data set of everything, not just this tab, right? So it has to analyze that entire data. So here we go. It's ready and right back up. Okay, sweet. What I'm going to show you guys is from an executive perspective, an analyst perspective that doesn't want to go into Power BI desktop, how to go ahead and leverage Copilot, right? So let's say we're seeing all of this information. Let's go back to our executive overview. We're seeing all of this information, and we just want to get an overall executive summary as to what is going on with this report, right? So we'll go ahead and click on Copilot now on the web. And as we could see, the preview has been turned off. This has been, I think, GA just recently, right? So simple. Give me an executive summary. Click on this, and Copilot gets to work. And immediately we get this output. From the data given, the total sales made for the urban products over the span of 1 year amounts to approximately 32.03 thousand. The sales data are aggregated from various channels. We get online channels or online sales as a channel that's notable. We get things like products that are notable. And just like how we did in Power BI Desktop, by clicking on some of these reference points, we get, we highlight where this information is all coming from, right? Which is, once again, it's a pretty neat thing that Copilot gives us to make sure that we're understanding visually where this stuff is coming from. In case you are in a meeting with an executive and they say, well, but where are you getting this information from? Well, you know where this is coming from, right? So we have this, which is a nice start, right? We also have an ability to ask Copilot a question on the web, and we'll go ahead and ask it the following. Let's say we want to go ahead and see what are some areas of opportunity to increase sales by the outlet channel. So we see that the outlet channel is kind of on the short side, right? And we want to see some areas of opportunity. So we're going to simply ask it this in plain English on the web, and we will send this prompt to Copilot. And immediately Copilot says, one major area of opportunity lies in the months with lower outlet sales. According to our data, outlet sales are lowest in July, June, and May. So as we can see here in the report, right in the bottom, as far as our channels are concerned, indeed, outlet is lowest in May, June. What was that it referenced? May, June, right? So May, June, and July. So and it expands upon it, right? So let me continue here where it says focusing on these months could potentially increase outlet channels sales. Moreover, comparing the product sales across multiple channels, there doesn't seem to be any outlet sales for the Maximus and Aliquid products, which is one of the higher performing products. So basically the point here is, once again, this is dummy data. The point here is that Copilot is analyzing our data set and giving us areas of opportunity in which we could strengthen some of our lacking products, right? Ways to increase our return on investment, right? Areas of opportunity that are not blatantly obvious to us in our data set. So without having to deep dive, without having to go to like the nth degree of hierarchy to see data, Copilot is giving us the answers immediately in plain English, which is, once again, a very, very valuable and powerful um, um, tool, right? So in this case, we're going to go ahead and expand upon sales seasonality. Now, Copilot gives us the ability to not only ask it a question, but it gives us the ability to basically continue the conversation. So if you guys have used things like ChatGPT or OpenAI before, you know that you have the ability to ask it a question and then continue to basically converse with it and expand upon what it's giving you, right? So in this case, we're expanding upon sales seasonality, which the output is that the total sales channel over time. Visual provides insight into sales seasonality across all channels, and it gives us the description, right? Where we're doing better over the season, over the year. And it breaks out everything across different channel where online sales range from 661,000 to 1.76. I guess in this case would be million, I guess. I'm not sure. So, anyways, we'll skip that. But the point is that it gives us these numbers, these number ranges, and we can continue to talk to Copilot. It's not just a one and done deal where we dip our toe and say, hey, give us something, and then walk away, and then give us something else, and it's completely unrelated to the previous prompt. Or we could scale on that. We could ask it, essentially in plain English, anything that makes sense, anything that's within the scope. You are going to once in a while ask Copilot something specific, and it's not going to quite understand what you're asking it, but it will turn around in plain English and ask you to elaborate upon what you mean, right? There's an example that I ran before, which I won't run in this meeting, but where I asked it a question about the regions, right? Where we have like the top 10 regions here. And I said something along the lines of like, hey, show me the sales totals by region. And Copilot wanted to understand where the lines were drawn in our regions, right? Because it's possible that our West Coast region is all the way up to, let's say, the line that runs down Montana and Wyoming down to the east of New Mexico, or it could be down to the east of Utah. So it gets that level of granular as far as to like understanding what you're asking it when you are too vague, which is, once again, in a way, a very powerful thing because it allows us to tweak exactly what we're looking at, and nothing is guessed when it comes to the Copilot outputs. I'm going to run two more examples here. One is, let's go back to the top, back to our executive summary here, and let's say we want Copilot to give us to anticipate, right? I want Copilot to anticipate likely questions from leadership. I mean, this is a prompt that is designed by default, which is very powerful. So let's go ahead and click on that. And Copilot will take a look at this tab, and it will tell us what are some of the likely questions that leadership will ask. And you could see the prompt, right? Give a concise summary of this page. Go back here. Give a concise summary of this page, and then provide a bulleted list of questions that leadership could ask about it. You could have literally copied this, right? Let's take a hypothetical. You could have taken this and typed this in yourself to Copilot and wrote this exact prompt, and this is what would come out, which gives, once again, just, plain English, right? Plain English. Please give me this, right? So you don't have to be very specific with how you're typing your information, right? So I want to highlight that with Copilot. And here we go. This page presents a detailed breakdown of the total sales by product and channel filters, right, which we know, for an executive overview. And then here it gets down to the key questions, right? What we're wanting to understand, right? What leadership might ask. What factors contribute to the high performance of online sales, and how can these be replicated across other channels? We spoke about before about outlet being a channel that's lacking, right? So leadership might ask, hey, online is killing it. What can we do in order to, kind of like spread some of the love across some of the other channels? With outlets contributing the least, are there strategies to improve the sales channels? Yeah, that kind of piggybacks off the previous. Is the sales performance meeting the set targets for the year, right? So when you take a look at your information on this visual and you take a look at your numbers, it is a plain and simple question that leadership might ask. And it's just Copilot gives you this intuitive insight into like thinking along those lines as an analyst. As a developer who is in BI, we all know you're not just writing code and walking away. You're very much entrenched in the business. So by, giving this to an executive, or having the executive themselves, help themselves by asking, what questions should I be asking? I mean, that's the power of this engine, right? And the last thing I want to go ahead and highlight, which is another built-in feature, is what insights I should look into, right? So if you are completely at a loss, or you don't even know what this report is showing, like you understand what the report is showing you, but you don't know really how to deep dive, where you should go, what avenue you should kind of go down and starting to analyze this on the web, Copilot will go ahead and start you off, right? So in this case, plain and simple, this is what the prompt would have been. What insights should I look into on this page? Looking at the visuals in the dashboard, here are some key insights you might want to explore. The visual total sales by product, we highlight what it's talking about. Gives you the insights into which products perform the best across different channels. Awesome. From the total sales by channel over time. Oh, where, huh? Oh, this, yes. Okay, cool. You can understand the trend of sales over time for each channel. Some of the stuff is obvious. Some of the stuff you're like, okay, yeah. But once again, depending on who you are, depending on how you're overwhelmed with the amount of data on the visuals, this just helps cement the understanding of what the information is, right? Powerful. So in conclusion with my presentation is, with Copilot, you have the ability to create pages immediately, just on the get-go. Give me a page, plain English information that I want to see. Page gets generated in Power BI Desktop. You have the ability to have Copilot suggest what you want to go ahead and do. I don't know where to even start. Suggest. Oh, key performance indicators. Okay, great start. Let's go ahead and click on that. Outputs key performance indicators. You have the ability to use a narrative, like we did in our analysis here, right? Which once again loads every time you click on it. Okay, it loaded faster this time, but here we got narrative. Narrative is a plain English description of the summary of either the tab or your entire report in one visual. You have the ability to use DAX help, which is one of my favorites, right? Which you have the ability to create DAX in plain English. You have the ability to understand DAX. You have the ability to ask it questions about DAX. You have the ability to even do, which I didn't get into this, but you have the ability to do DAX comparisons. So for example, if you write one DAX one way, you write it another way, it goes into kind of doing like code compare. If you guys have ever seen that before in some other code repository tools, where it compares, it might highlight a red line or a green line where it shows you the differences in the code. DAX could take care, Copilot could take care of that for you with DAX, which is nice. You also have the measure descriptions for your fact tables or your measure tables, which give you your total sales, your percentage sales, whatever the case may be, broken down in plain English by simply just clicking on a button. Remember, you have the ability to retry and kind of have Copilot give you a description in another format, which might not be clear to you, but now it's like now so you understand, right? Um, and then on the web, right, which is a total kind of like you can almost look at Copilot in two different ways: Power BI desktop, Power BI on the web, right? And on the web, you have the ability to get a lot of these questions answered for you. Give me just a summary of what's going on with this report. Let me ask you a question about what I see here. Let me expand upon that question that I asked you further. Questions from leadership. How can I deep dive into this data and maybe look into things that are not so obvious on the surface? Um, all in all, once again, guys, Copilot is an exciting tool for the future when it comes to Power BI, and I'm excited to have presented this to you. So I will go ahead and turn it back to Igor.
Great, Andy. Thank you so much. Great job presenting.
Thank you, guys.
So with that, we're going to turn it over to have some questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, I believe, please type them into the chat and we'll get those answered for you.
Yeah, so I got a couple that I've logged throughout the meeting, and then if you raise your hand, we can actually unmute you and you can ask them live. So we saw creating measures using Copilot, so we got that. So we have a question here about the cost of running queries and creating report pages. And Igor, I'm not sure if we have enough detail yet that we generated per, what it costs to generate a page, but how many tokens does it cost to create a new report page?
Great question. So this was in preview and it just became GA. So we have been running this in demo mode, and where it just became active, I believe, within the last week or two. So we haven't seen the cost yet of this, but looking at just the CUs, this is everything that we've demoed so far is only a couple bucks.
Oh. All right. And Andy, I don't know if you had mentioned it in your presentation, but does Copilot narrative update based on applied filters?
Yes, it does. So I think I mentioned that when I went on the web. So one of the reasons why I reran once we were on the web is because Copilot narrative continues to look for changes that are happening in the data. So it's almost like a live tap into the data set, and it reanalyzes it as you go. And depending on, remember, there's the ability to run narrative just for the tab or for the entire report. So if there's a change that happened a few tabs over that you are taking into consideration in how you're filtering narrative, it'll go ahead and populate an update with those changes that have been applied.
Okay. Somebody had asked if this session was being recorded and shared out, and the answer to that is yes, and it will be posted on the Inspire Solutions website. And if you guys, on the call, if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you if you have a question. So question, will the same prompts generate the same dashboard tiles?
The same prompts generate the same dashboard tiles. You mean if we were to delete the previous prompt, add the same prompt again, and recreate it again? Is that what you're saying? I mean, I'm wondering if that's what they're asking. So if you were to say, for example, show me the total sales by category, delete that, delete the page, and then write, show me the total sales by category again. From my testing, from what I've seen, yes. But do know that Copilot is kind of gets creative a little bit in how it shows you the data sometimes as a starter. So there's a possibility that some flavors might be a little bit different than others when you resubmit the same question. But for the most part, it is along the same lines, the same output.
Got a question. Oh, here we go. Good. All right.
Can you clarify the difference? You said at the very beginning that you needed an F64 SKU to run this product, but Microsoft says you can also run it from a premium P1, which is equivalent. Can you verify that?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, you could run from
Yeah.
Igor, if I may. You
Sure.
could from the research we did prior, you could run from either or. It F64 equivalent being the premium on the other side. So yes, it's either or.
okay. And then when you ran your queries against Fabric data, how did you protect the data from a Copilot search to not return results that someone doesn't have privilege to see?
That
That's a great
is
question. We
a good
haven't
question.
dug deep into that, and we're still looking into it. So Copilot has just recently been released, and we're still exploring it as well.
And I understand that Copilot, as long as your license just shows up in the Fabric tenant, there's nothing you have to do to schedule
Schedule the refresh.
it, schedule or configure it, I mean.
So you have to enable you have to make sure your Fabric capacity is turned on. For Copilot, you have to make sure, of course, you're on F64. And there are some settings. They're not covered, of course, in the scope of this presentation, but there are some settings you have to enable. Some of them are easy to Google and research, and just make sure that your configurations for Power BI are set for the Copilot sensitivities, if you get what I mean. But it's a simple kind of turn on kind of deal where in settings.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Can you see that chat, Andy? You're on mute.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the questions. I was looking at one here where it was asking about the differences in how you should present your data with Copilot, like if we needed a star schema or a snowflake schema. I think that Copilot works with either. I mean, it just looks at your data set, looks at the total model. I think it breaks down everything that's happening up behind the scenes, and it gives you answers and insights no matter how you're presenting the model. I don't think there's an ideal way, um, especially kind of moving into the future with all the processing power we have in the world of data nowadays, with things being on the cloud versus on-prem. A lot of the stuff tends to be a lot of very flat data sets with hundreds of columns of data, and we expect our engines to just pre-aggregate and output. So, with that being said, I don't think Copilot has a preference. If you go ahead and create a star schema, of course, that's your personal preference for your approach, especially if you're dealing with on-prem when it comes to your data, your database. But it should work with either. Um, Here's another one. Do you know how Power BI Copilot compares to Azure to Amazon QuickSight? We haven't done a comparison to Amazon QuickSight, so unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that. Um, will it save? Oh, somebody's asking a question.
Now on mute. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So I want to know about the security in Copilot, for example, in ChatGPT. The answer is just like a recorder in some way. So in Copilot, for example, if I have to create a measure or something like that, they're gonna be access to the data information, because sometimes I just like work with confidential data in Power BI, and I don't know if I ask something about this data is going to be recorded or something, or save it in somewhere.
So I think the best way that I can answer that is is take something like row level security. I think that if you implement something like that through your code and you pass that down into the data source that you're ultimately feeding to Power BI desktop, or in this case Power BI on the web, if you ask Copilot a question on the web that your row level security doesn't have access to, it's at the mercy of the data model. So if the data model for
Okay.
your login does not access that data, you will not get a response on that information.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm checking the so there's another question there. either the chat or the QA, can you feed Copilot another award-winning dashboard design and ask it to create a dashboard for your data model emulating that design?
That's a good question. That's a good specific question. I don't know. We haven't. That's a very specific thing. I don't think we've tested that, but we do know that I think that Copilot for Power BI, the intention is to get you started visually. I don't think the intention, I mean, you can. I mean, we saw with this output, you could literally ask it 5, 6 different questions, have 5, 6 different tabs. You could go present to somebody just like that. But I think the intentions overall is to get you started. If you're more of a developer or more of like an artist when it comes to visualizations, you have this starting point that you just wrote in plain English to query the data, and now you could fine tune it however you need.
And just going back to security, so Power BI Copilot uses Azure's OpenAI services for processing, not OpenAI's publicly available services. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Okay, any other questions?
There's one here that says, does it have the ability to well, I was reading another one and I guess this got pushed down, but I guess I'll address this one too. Does it have the ability to connect to Snowflake data and how it compares to Snowflake Cortex? I think there it's at the mercy of whatever Power BI has the ability to connect to.
So
Did you do research on
jump
that,
in here.
Igor?
Yeah, so keep in mind, when you purchase Fabric, Copilot comes with Fabric. So I believe that you have to have your data in Fabric to be able to leverage Copilot. So it's not a standalone product, it's a feature that you get bundled when you purchase Fabric.
Yeah, and I think
So-
to add to that, so if you were to import a Snowflake data set that ultimately gets published as a semantic model to Power BI, then I think you're good, right? Because there you're leveraging Power BI, you're leveraging Fabric, you're leveraging the semantic model. But if you're expecting a live connection to Snowflake, right? That I think to Igor's point, I don't think that'll work.
No.
We haven't researched that, but I believe that will not work. Somebody wanted me to elaborate on analysis patterns, which I'll answer really quickly here. Let me get back to that question. Will it save certain analysis patterns for potential reuse for other like data? Uh, I don't want to say like yes as an all-encompassing, but like I mentioned before, you have the ability to expand upon the information that you've asked it. So you have the ability in Copilot to go ahead and ask it a question. The data set gives you an output. You can go ahead and expand upon that data by continuing to ask it further questions, almost like if you're drilling down into data at lower levels of granularity. I don't think there's a way to save prompts unless Igor, you researched something that I overlooked, but I didn't see an ability to save prompts or to save something for future use. But I do know that, and here's an interesting one. We didn't demo that for this, but there might be a possibility that let's say you created a measure in Copilot, and the way that you created it might get stored into the metadata behind that Power BI report on Power BI desktop, which you could always kind of go ahead and re-reference. I'm pretty sure that's by design done that way, especially when we're talking about things like metadata or excuse me, measure descriptions and things of that nature that get stored into the description fields. So I don't have a simple yes or no answer to that. I think there might be a way to leverage your metadata for the future to scale it, but just off the top there, I don't think it stores it in the way you're expecting it. Does it automate data preparation?
There are two more questions I don't think we've gotten to, Andy. So
Which one?
can we have Copilot present a set number of questions with a standard answers?
Well, this comes from the AI engine for Microsoft. I don't know if there's a way to go and tinker with it and be like, only give a certain set of answers. That might be due once again to what I mentioned before when we were talking about security, row level security. So if you're saying that, hey, for example, if John has access to a model and John has complete access to it, he might ask a question and get 5 different possible answers. And if I'm limited to just the stuff that I could see, I'm only going to get one answer every time. Because at the row level, it's only mapped to be able to see a certain amount of response. I know there was a hand being raised.
Yeah. Allowing the mic. Shabir. Hold on. Yep.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Yeah. So just to elaborate on that question, right? It's just to make sure that we have a consistent answers being provided by Copilot across, so if I have a set of data, right now, let's assume everybody can see everything, right, on this dashboard. So if we have a set of data and there are different users coming in and they're asking these questions, first is there a way for us to say, hey, these are top 10 questions being asked, and these are the standard answers for those top 10 questions, and so that we want to make sure that everybody gets the same answer because the same data, nothing is changing.
Right. I don't think that Copilot, you're going to ask it, for example, what does the sales mean? What does this measure mean? And it's going to give you 20 different possible answers. Like, it's only going to give you a core answer. And in some cases, on that retry feature that I showed before, it only gave me the same answer a bunch of times. Like, it didn't go anywhere else. But what it tries to do is it tries to rephrase something in a different way. And if you were to put the two like by like, they're synonymous with each other. It's the same answer, just written in a different way. So there's one core answer to Copilot prompts. It just gives you the ability to see it from another angle, in case that it didn't quite sink in that explanation. But it's the same explanation if you boil it down. So it's not like, I don't want to give the impression that Copilot gives you 20 different possibilities when you're asking it a question. It gives you, for the most part, the same output. It just gives you the ability to kind of turn it on its head if you want to see it from a different angle.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in here as well. So there's so many features and functionality that comes with Copilot. We're still exploring a lot of them. For example, can we have access to the backend? Is there like a backend database that Copilot stores all the questions asked, all the answers that were given? What were the top questions asked? Which questions was Copilot not able to answer? So things like that we're still looking into to see where it's stored, how we can get to it. But like I said earlier, this is a new feature and we're still exploring it. But yeah, very powerful. And I'm sure there's a way to get access to the backend questions.
Yeah,
Answers,
I know
and
there's
see
a
where they're stored.
Copilot Studio. I know there's a Copilot
Yep.
Studio as well. I'm not sure if that integrates somehow through Azure or how that does. Remember, guys, we're focusing just on the surface layer of this for presentation purposes, to show you, as us being consumers of the tool, what the powerful aspects of it is. But I'm sure there's a bunch of layers of complexity that we haven't gotten into with Copilot that, if they're not available today, it will be available in the future, because Microsoft has made it clear that this is the future for them.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
In the chat, Andy, there's a new question.
In the chat. Okay. Will the tool learn and share information related to your queries with others? Assuming this might be a concern with others within the enterprise. Good question. We didn't have a chance to test that. Okay, so within the enterprise, right? If it's both within the enterprise, I'm assuming so.
I guess it's whatever you save in the report, correct, Andy? So if you're building a
Yeah.
dashboard, you're saving it and you're publishing it, it's whoever has access to your dashboard that will be able to see your insights that you created.
Yeah, but I think to this question's point is, like, if I'm kind of digging really deep into it, is there an ability to have somebody else in another PC, load up Power BI desktop, for example, and start to kind of ask it questions where now it's going to consider the answers that was given to somebody else? That's a great question. I unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that, but based on the way that these models tend to learn, I wouldn't be surprised that it does that. Sharing it with the outside, from a public perspective, I don't think it would. I don't see Microsoft designing it that way.
If you're using an M365 Copilot license, it will not learn across users.
Which one? I'm sorry.
You're using an M365 licensed Copilot. It will not learn across users.
So it just pings. So it just pings the AI basically, and it's kind of prompted and like over and over and over, right? Yeah,
It doesn't build
one
a language model for you across your company.
right. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with license specific, or I'm wondering if, once again, like I mentioned before, if they're looking to scale that over time, right? I wouldn't be surprised that they would, to be honest with you, just based on how much they're putting into this product.
They want you to use Azure AI services, so you pay for those resources to capture those languages.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, we'll see. Microsoft tends to have an ability to boil down everything to one kind of synonymous whole. They tend to do that a lot. So I don't doubt that happening with Copilot as well. Getting a lot of thank yous. Thank you guys. I appreciate your feedback.
All right. Well, we are 1 minute over. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that joined this afternoon. We appreciate you taking time out of your day and spending an hour with us. If you have any questions, any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to get back with you and share what we know. Thanks, everybody. Bye all.
Thank you
Thank you.
guys. Thank you guys for joining. Okay. Bye.